coming up.
I'll bring you some more coffee, okay?
For the next governor of Alaska, a tall order to fill.
I think you have an idea of what this state could be like, right?
A promise to do more to fight crime, pay a full permanent fund dividend, all with no new taxes.
I want to be Mike, the guy who said he was going to do what he said he was going to do in the campaign.
We head to the restaurant in Wasilla, where the campaign was hatched, to sit down with Mike Dunleavy and his wife Rose.
That was just part of rural village life.
Ahead, their early life together and how it shaped a future governor.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. The race for governor will soon be but a memory as a new Republican administration takes shape. But the questions remain. What sort of man will take the reins of government? What past experiences have shaped his character? What can we expect from Mike Dunleavy when the hard work of governing begins? The Mat-Su Valley, where Mike Dunleavy came of age in Alaska politics, where he served as a state senator, and where he began to aspire to higher office.
This fine lady, this is my wife Rose.
And even now, after his election, he still comes back to the Windbreak Café, a place where Dunleavy says he feels at home, where he insisted our interview take place. This is one of the first in-depth interviews since you won the election. Why here at this restaurant?
It's close to home. And I like the restaurant. I like the people. I come here a lot. They're good folks.
So were some important campaign strategies hatched here?
Yes, sure.
Let's roll the clock back to Scranton, Pennsylvania. What was it like growing up in the Dunleavy household?
That's a long time ago. So we grew up in a small house on a little road called Church Avenue in Scranton, where you would have house after house after house after house. You could talk to your neighbor through the window. That's how close you were. Father was a mailman, World War II vet, then a mailman, and he retired as a mailman. My mother worked in the city office. She was a clerk. She retired there as well. I had three brothers, all older than me, and we had a little 3-bedroom house, and it was great. Great neighbors, great kids to hang out with. I have nothing but terrific memories of Scranton.
Well, we're often shaped by our childhood memories. How were you shaped?
During the vaudeville days, they used to say if you can make it in Scranton, you can make it anywhere. So it's an East Coast town, so folks are very forward in their conversations. Some people that are not used to those discussions will think people are arguing, or sounds like arguing, but really discussing things. Hardworking, blue-collar town. It was the coal capital of the world at one time, anthracite coal. And it just made you tougher. It just made you be able to deal with what life has to throw at you, I think. It prepared you for life.
I'm curious about your brother Francis, because he helped you get elected. There's no doubt that he gave you that head start by contributing several $100,000 to an independent expenditure group, and that resulted early on before the other candidates were really out there fighting.
He's a great brother. I got 3 brothers. We're all pretty tight. We get along really well. We help each other. And yes, my brother Francis thought it'd be kind of exciting to help his brother become elected.
So how did Francis come by his money, especially since you sort of have working class, blue-collar roots?
Well, you can look in the papers. He was an investor. He worked for some firms on Wall Street. But, you know, you may find this a little weird, a little strange, but we're tight, but we don't ask each other what our finances are. We don't ask each other certain questions because that's just the way we are. We're tight, but we're independent, and we have our own lives. I mean, I have a brother who's a doctor, but I never ask him how much money he makes. I have a brother who's an airline pilot, but I don't ask him how much money he makes. And the same with my other brother, Francis. I don't ask him how much money he makes. I have no idea how much money he makes. None at all.
So, are your parents still alive?
No, they passed away. My father passed away in 2012 at the age of, he was almost 93. And my mother passed away in 07 at about age 79, 80.
So, they would be pretty proud to find out that you're governor. What would your mom and dad say, you think?
They would be, especially my mom. My mom followed politics. My father did too, but my mom got involved at the local level, you know, committee chairmanship type of stuff in Scranton.
Well, it's not every day that you have in a family, you know, a financier, a governor, and a doctor. What did your parents do?
They were both products of the Depression, you know, and that kind of, I think, forms a certain outlook on life. They were FDR Democrats. My mother and father always put their family first, and I have to give them credit because raising 4 boys in Scranton wasn't an easy task. I would say we grew up low middle class, but money was not something we talked about. There was never bemoaning the fact. I mean, we had food on the table and we had a roof over our head, and we just enjoyed life. We're just like every other kid in the neighborhood.
Well, everybody has a memory of some kind of saying their parents have, like, don't count your chickens before they hatch. What kind of sayings did you grow up with?
I remember my father always saying, never say you should have. Never say you should have done something. Always, if you want to do something, do it. Never look back and say, I should have done something. So whether it's going to Alaska, whether it's going to rural Alaska, whether it's running for Senate, running for governor, I think that resonated. You know, if you want to do something, this is America, do it. Don't regret something you should have done. Don't look back and say, I should have gone to Alaska, or I should have run for governor, or I should have done this. So I think that was a big influence on all of us. And always don't follow the herd was another one that they would say, meaning just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean you have to. And that kind of serves you well if it allows you to think independently on your own and make your own decisions. And I think and I'm sure my brothers would say the same thing, I was always satisfied with the decisions I made as opposed to overriding my decision based upon the opinions of others. And so, pretty independent people.
When we come back, plans for the next governor's swearing-in ceremony, something that's never been done before, how a tiny community just above the Arctic Circle will bear witness to the transfer of power from one governor to the next. Following an election, the Alaska Constitution sets the start of the governor's term of office at noon on the first Monday in December. That's when Mike Dunleavy and his Lieutenant Governor, Kevin Meyer, will be sworn in. Typically, that ceremony takes place in Juneau, but Mike Dunleavy has moved it to Norvik, a community of about 600 people southeast of Kotzebue. It's a choice that's easier to understand if you know about Dunleavy's personal connection to the region. It's where he was known as Big Mike because he's 6'7". Mike Dunleavy says his love of hunting and fishing is what brought him to Alaska, and he got his first taste of Inupiat culture when he took a teaching job near Nome in the tiny community of Koyuk. So were you given an Inupiat name?
A Vinyak.
What's that?
Mouse. It's a play on my size. Yes, and that was given to me in Koyuk by a student of mine. That was pretty cute. So I like the name.
Not long afterwards, Mike Dunleavy met his wife, Rose, at a basketball tournament in Nome.
Her sister is married to a man that lived in Nome, and I played on his basketball team, and we met at dinner at their house. It was the first time we met.
And what was your impression of her?
Well, come on. I mean, we're married. I thought she was a very attractive person, but I also thought she was a very nice person. Very nice person. I just saw how she interacted with people. She worked for the airlines, so she was a worker. Treated people really, really well. Seemed to be always happy. And I thought that was, the whole package was attractive.
What did you think?
Boy, he's big. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, He was, I thought, a little more reserved than he is right now. I mean, he was.
So he wasn't cocky.
No, not
No?
at all. Not at all. I mean,
Shy guy.
yes, I would say so.
A lot of times when non-natives marry into native families, they also fall in love with the family.
She had a great family. She has a great family.
Did your family try to bring him into the Inupiat subsistence culture?
Not really. I mean, he was already into the culture anyway. When we met, he's always hunting, snow
Yeah, I think
shinning.
we're just people. I mean, I think that's why we're.
I mean, that was just part of rural village life was, you know, weekend, okay, we'll go hunting this weekend. We'll go snow machining, any kind of outdoor activity usually, boating.
But you got to remember, Pennsylvania is a hunting culture. Rural Pennsylvania, everyone goes hunting. I mean, they have a day off for school in November for the first day of deer season. You'd see deer in the back of pickup trucks, on the hoods of cars. I mean, hunting was huge in Pennsylvania.
So you felt right at home?
When I moved to Koyuk, yes, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I remember going out walking on the trail the first 2 days I was there, and I was just, it was more than you can imagine. It was better than pictures. And the people of Koyuk, and that's where I got my first start really long-term in rural Alaska. I went to Southeast Alaska for several months at a logging camp and then moved up after that. But those people were fantastic.
The Dunleavys eventually wound up in Kotzebue, where the future governor went on to become superintendent of the Northwest Arctic Borough School District. And during that time, the Dunleavys raised 3 daughters. For you to be in a family with 4 women, you're the minority vote.
You know, I never, I know a lot of folks do this, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I never was hoping and praying for a boy. I'd assumed that one of them would be, just because of the numbers, but I just wanted to have healthy, happy kids. And these kids are healthy and happy, and they are low-maintenance girls. They'd be low-maintenance boys. They get along well. They don't demand a lot. A lot of Carhartts are worn in the family. They can drive a beat-up truck or a car and not worry about it. They are so secure and happy with who they are. I couldn't be happier. We got some pretty good kids.
Rose Dunleavy is from Norvik, where she grew up in a family of 12. The school there is named for her father, Robert Akaluk Newland Sr., a man remembered as a champion of education. On December 3rd, the governor's swearing-in ceremony will take place in the school gym, which can barely hold 800 people.
I was surprised and happy, and I did get a lot of positive comments from people from my house, my hometown. It was nice. They're anxious to see me.
So,
See us.
I want to see you, not.
Well, they know me, you know.
Hey, I played
personally.
basketball with a lot of the guys my age in her village, so
Yeah.
we'll be renewing some old friendships.
Yes.
So why did you choose Norvik? Because it is kind of hard to get to.
Because that's where I fell in love with Alaska, and Alaska fell in love with me, I think. The people out there, they've been great. They're just terrific people. They don't get an opportunity to see this very often. I don't think there's ever been a swearing in rural Alaska way off the road system.
I think it may be the furthest north swearing in for a governor.
Possibly. But they're Alaskans, and oftentimes they're forgotten. Alaska's an amazing state, but it gives people an opportunity to see the transfer of power. And that's what this is. The swearing is the transfer of power. And the power belongs to the people. So sitting in that audience will be the people that own this government. And they're going to be able to watch for the first time in rural Alaska, one governor, Governor Bill Walker, who's been our governor for 4 years, through the Constitution, transferring the power peacefully to another individual as governor for 4 years. But that power belongs to the people. So this will be the first time I see it. I just think all Alaska should have an opportunity.
One of the questions I've always put to past governors is, if you were to have a label, what would it be?
I want to be Mike, the guy who said he was going to do what he said he was going to do in the campaign. I want to be the guy that is no different than when I campaigned, no different before I campaigned. I mean, Rhonda, I've only been in politics about 8 or 9 years. I'm the same guy I was 25 years ago, the same guy I was 8 years ago, the same guy I was 2 months ago. I'm going to be the same guy I am 4 years from now.
Well, it may be hard for Dunleavy to deliver on those campaign promises because a lot depends on factors beyond his control, primarily the price of oil and the stock market. When we come back, Tim Bradner weighs in on one of Mike Dunleavy's most popular pledges to pay a full permanent fund dividend, and then some. One of Mike Dunleavy's biggest campaign promises to pay a full permanent fund dividend based on the traditional formula and pay back what was cut from dividends over the past 3 years. He says he's still committed to that plan, even though it might draw about $6 billion from the fund's earnings account.
So my goal is to make sure that everybody gets a PFD based upon the statute that's been in place for decades. That's my goal. And we have plenty of money in the earnings reserve to do that. And that's what we're going to be doing.
For now, though, what if the stock market crashes and there
What
are
happens if,
less earnings?
Yeah, and what happens if the oil goes to $5 a barrel? All bets are off at that point. You have to have a discussion with the people of Alaska.
Well, Tim Bradner joins us now to talk about Mike Dunleavy's plan for our next permanent fund dividend. And Tim has covered Alaska politics and the state's natural resource industry for decades. You feel like Mike Dunleavy is leaving himself some wiggle room here, Tim?
Well, if you just listen to what he said, you'd think so. But I think the conversation that he speaks of may have to happen before oil reaches $5 a barrel, because the way this is going to play out is if he really, tries to live up to those campaign promises, which he's pretty well committed to do, it's going to take a big chunk out of the earnings reserve. It's going to cut the amount of money that goes into the Treasury each year. And in terms of going forward, it's going to restrict the amount of money that's available for the normal expenses of state government. The larger dividend you pay out, the less there is for education, public services.
And he says he wants to beef up public safety. So one plan is contingent on another, it sounds like. Well, let's take a look at some numbers, and maybe it'll give us a chance to grasp better what he's talking about. So the dividend estimate under the Dunleavy plan, what we would get, wow, more than $6,000 there, close to $7,000.
Yeah, and I think, Ron, we have to explain this a little bit. The $6,700 assumes the normal dividend full funding, as he says, for 2019, plus the 3 years in arrears. So that's a big check, and that's assuming that they pay it out next year. I think a lot of Alaskans may be expecting it before next year. They might be expecting a check for $3,700 just for the 3 years.
And that's for the arrears of what the governor and the legislature cut from the dividend.
Yeah, they may be looking for a check in the next few weeks. But he can't, we have to remember, the governor can't really appropriate the money. It's the legislature. He can't send the checks out. The legislature has to approve it. The Constitution says the legislature has the power of appropriation. So in the end, all despite campaign promises, it's all up to the legislature.
Well, everybody in Alaska, of course, nervously watches the price of oil. And for a while it was rallying, and now, after some of President Trump's actions, it looks like it's heading downward.
Yeah, we can never predict the price of oil. Right now, it does look like it's headed down. But who knows? It could be. It could go back up. This is all depending on geopolitical factors that we had.
Now, earlier this week, I talked with Governor Bill Walker, and he thought that he might be leaving his office with a little bit of reserve if prices of oil stay steady. But it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do that. But he's come closest to a balanced budget, perhaps. In years.
Well, that's right. Thanks to the Senate Bill 26 that the governor supported and the legislature passed last year, we are taking some money from the permanent fund earnings and using it to help the budget. So we are close to being balanced. How close, we don't know. We will be smarter in a few weeks when the state makes its long-term revenue forecast, which it does every early December every year.
So what do you think about this payout and the impact on the state? You know, he has to get the legislature to go along with it, and they might be inclined to do that if all three houses, three bodies of state government are in Republican control. He might be able to pull that off.
Well, I think legislators also have signed on to this. They heard about this, and it was very prominent in the governor-elect's campaign. So a lot of the Republicans have agreed with it, and they heard it on the stump, people talking about it. So they're kind of committed too. So it's going to be a really courageous legislature to back off and say we can't do it. What may happen is they may pay 1 year of the funding, maybe
For the back dividends.
Yeah, and maybe not go back the entire 3 years. But everybody seems to be signed on to this full funding of the dividend plan according to the formula, which again is just a statute. The decision is ultimately made by the legislature. And that can create problems going forward if they really do that.
Well, we've had this standoff for years about changing the way that we pay out the dividend and moving to this percent of market value program. And maybe you could briefly explain to us what that is, because that's what the legislature did, is they finally got to that point where you treat the permanent fund like an endowment.
Right. The percent of market value is simply taking a percentage of whatever the market value of the fund is at that time. In this case, 5.25% going down to 5% after 3 years. That's very typical for the way large endowments operate, like Harvard, Yale, the big pension funds. It doesn't really have anything to do with the dividend per se. The legislature wrestled with that last year. They tried to put a formula in Senate Bill 26 to include the dividend, and they didn't do it in the end. So the way Senate Bill 26 is structured now is it takes that percentage of earnings for the general fund, but it has to be shared between the dividend and the support of government. So however big the dividend is, it's that much less for government. It's sort of an interesting dynamic.
Because if we have a full dividend based on the 5-year rolling average that we've had in the past of, averaging the highs and lows in the stock market, then potentially we might not have enough to pull any of that out to fund government and be back in the hole. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what people are worried about. I don't think you'd run out of money for government, but what you would do is you'd take a big chunk out. For example, I've seen some projections from the State Office of Management and Budget that if you fully fund the dividend out into the future, what happens in 2 or 3 years is you start shorting the general fund government support by about $1 billion a year by 2022 and 2023. Now, if you have a budget of $4 or $5 billion, that's a lot. It's a lot to cut. You'd have to cut government by that amount. So instead of supporting government, you're paying it out in a PFD to people's pockets. So.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much, Tim Bradner, for joining us. Well, we just have so many big questions in the air, so we'll just have to leave it at this place right now. But we want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rob.